Don't forget to subscribe for more true stories, because sometimes silence isn't weakness. It's strategy. Broken heart. My name is Eleanor Whitmore, and I'm 70 years old. For most of my life, I believed in grace, good manners, and giving without expecting anything in return. But I also believed my daughter would never see me as a bank account. That belief didn't survive the last 2 years. When my husband Thomas passed away, everything in my world shrank. The laughter, the noise, even the reason to cook for two. We'd been married for 43 years. He handled the numbers, I handled the home. I trusted him always. He left everything in order: savings, investments, insurance. Enough for me to live comfortably, and my daughter Rebecca was our only child. Sharp tongue, sharper ambition. She'd married a man named Kyle, a financial consultant who dressed like success but spoke like a salesman. They lived in Los Angeles. Penthouse apartment, imported wine. A life built entirely on presentation. When Thomas died, they came for the funeral, all crocodile tears and soft voices. "Mom, you shouldn't be alone," Rebecca said. Kyle added, "We can help manage things for you, the bills, the taxes, all that." At the time it sounded kind. Looking back, it was the first brick in the trap they built around me. The first 6 months after Thomas's death were a blur. Rebecca called every few days asking how I was holding up, if I was eating, sleeping. She'd end every call the same way. "You should let us take care of your finances, Mom. You're too trusting for this world." I resisted at first. But grief makes you slow, soft. When she offered to simplify things by linking my credit card to her account. "Just for emergencies, Mom, so I can help if anything happens." I agreed. Felt harmless. And for a while it was. Then small things began to happen. A purchase at Nordstrom I didn't remember. A hotel charge in Malibu. Rebecca brushed it off. Then a $2,000 transaction labeled Luxe Retreat Spa. I called Rebecca. "Sweetheart, did you?" Her voice was sugar and smoke. "Oh, Mom, don't be silly." Except the weekend came. And went. No spa trip. No surprise. No explanation. I started checking my statements more carefully. The mistakes. And every time I asked, I got the same. "Mom, relax. It's all family. What's yours is ours." That sentence sat in my chest like a stone. The breaking point came on a Sunday morning. Rebecca called, voice bright and casual. "Hey Mom, quick thing. Kyle's company had a rough quarter. Could we borrow $5,000? Just a bridge loan." I swallowed. "You've been borrowing, Rebecca. You just haven't called it that." Her voice hardened. "Are you really going to nickel and dime your own daughter? Dad would have helped." I hung up before I said something I couldn't take back. That afternoon I drove to the bank. I asked for a full account summary. When the manager printed it and handed it over, I sat frozen. In less than a year, $68,400 had been charged through my card. Almost all of it traced to Rebecca's account. And the worst part? She hadn't stolen my card. I'd given it to her. I drove home shaking. Angry, ashamed, exhausted. Thomas's voice echoed in my head, calm, logical. "Ellie, don't fight emotion with emotion. Fight it with proof." So I made a plan. No shouting. No drama. No warnings. Just a quiet, clean correction. I called the bank. "I need to report a lost card," I said. Then I paused. "And I'd like to set up a new private account. Under my name only." The banker hesitated. "Would you like to block linked accounts as well?" I smiled, the first real smile I'd managed in months. "Yes," I said. "All of them." That night Rebecca texted. "Hey Mom, your card isn't working. Did you change something?" I didn't answer. 10 minutes later another text. "We're at dinner. This is embarrassing. Fix it, please." I placed my phone face down on the table and poured myself a glass of wine. The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. By midnight she called. 5 times. Then Kyle. Voicemail after voicemail. Their voices sliding from confusion to irritation to panic. But I was done being the safety net. For the first time in years I slept through the night. That was the night I stopped being Rebecca's mother in her eyes. And started being something else. A woman who could say no. The morning after I canceled the card, the calls didn't stop. By noon there were 8 missed calls and 3 voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. Instead, I made myself breakfast, eggs, toast, coffee, the simple kind Thomas used to make. Tasted like peace. When I finally checked my phone, the messages had changed tone. Mom, the card company must have made a mistake. You need to call them now. Mom, this isn't funny. Kyle's furious. Furious. That word stayed with me. They weren't embarrassed or apologetic, they were angry. Because the well had run dry. That afternoon I went to the bank again. The same young teller from yesterday greeted me with a nervous smile. Mrs. Whitmore, she said, we've confirmed your request. All linked accounts are now frozen. Would you like to transfer your savings to the new account? I hesitated, and then I remembered Rebecca's laughter, her casual, what's yours is ours. Yes, I said. Every penny. She clicked away at her keyboard, and I watched the numbers shift across the screen like dominoes falling in reverse. It felt like reclaiming gravity after floating too long. That evening, Rebecca showed up at my house. She didn't knock gently. I opened the door to see her standing there, phone in hand, face flushed with anger. What did you do? She snapped. Good evening to you too, I said. Mom, our cards aren't working. The bank says you shut down the joint access. Why would you do that? I stepped aside so she could come in, but I didn't offer her tea this time. Because it was never joint, I said. It was mine. She scoffed. You're being dramatic. We used it for family things. Like your spa trips? Or the new car Kyle bought last month? Her eyes widened. You went through my transactions? They were my transactions, I said calmly. You just made them. For a moment, the room was silent except for the ticking clock. Then Rebecca crossed her arms. You're punishing us for trying to help you. I almost laughed. You helped yourself, Rebecca. You didn't even hide it. She turned to leave, muttering something under her breath. At the door she stopped. You know, Dad would be disappointed. That one hit me hard. But I didn't let her see it. I just said yes, he would. But not in me. For the next few weeks, the distance between us grew. She stopped calling. I stopped wondering why. I spent my days reorganizing my life, quietly, efficiently. I met with an estate lawyer named Clara Benson, a woman who looked barely 30 but had the composure of a general. She went through my documents line by line. Mrs. Whitmore, she said finally, do you want your daughter involved in your finances moving forward? I looked at her steady. No, not anymore. Then we'll start fresh, she said, smiling. You deserve to live your life on your own terms. For the first time in a long time, I felt like someone was speaking to me, not around me. Weeks later, I received an invitation in the mail. Rebecca's handwriting on the envelope, elegant, sharp. Inside was a card. Mom, come to dinner. Let's talk. I almost didn't go. But something in me, curiosity, maybe closure, made me say yes. The restaurant was one of those new age places with gold menus and no prices listed. Rebecca and Kyle were already seated, all smiles and charm. Mom, Kyle said warmly. Good to see you. We were worried. I sat down watching them closely. Rebecca leaned forward. We just wanted to clear the air. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I raised an eyebrow. A misunderstanding that lasted a year? Kyle chuckled, pretending not to hear the edge in my voice. Money's complicated, Mrs. Whitmore. Families mix love and finances all the time. We should just move on. Rebecca nodded eagerly. Yes, we're family. Let's not make things awkward. I sipped my water. Funny. You never thought it was awkward using my card. Her smile faltered. Kyle reached across the table. We can fix this. Maybe you could just reopen access even temporarily until... I set my glass down. No. Rebecca blinked. No. No, Kyle. No, Rebecca. Not again. I've paid for everything in your lives except your self-awareness. That's on you. The waiter came by just then with the check. Kyle handed over his card confidently. The waiter returned moments later, looking apologetic. I'm sorry, sir. Your card's been declined. Rebecca's face went red. Try again. I did, the waiter said softly. 3 times. The silence that followed was delicious. I reached into my purse, took out cash, and placed it neatly on the bill. Then I looked at Rebecca. Dinner's on me. For the last time. I stood up and left without looking back. That night, I slept like someone who'd finally remembered her own power. Thomas would have been proud. Not because I'd hurt them, but because I'd learned the difference between kindness and permission. Sometimes the quietest moments hold the loudest freedom, and mine had just begun. A week after that dinner, the silence between Rebecca and me became official. No calls, no messages, not even the obligatory "Are you okay?" On Sundays, I thought the quiet would hurt. Instead, it felt like recovery. The house stopped feeling empty. It started feeling mine again. I spent the next month cleaning out the things that didn't belong to me anymore. Old receipts with Rebecca's handwriting, photos that looked more like obligations than memories, clothes Thomas had kept just in case. Grief is strange that way. It leaves pieces of people behind, tucked between pages, folded in drawers, lingering in smells. But once I started letting go, I realized something. I wasn't grieving Thomas anymore. I was grieving the version of myself that thought love meant sacrifice without limits. One afternoon, I got a call from my lawyer, Clara. "Mrs. Whitmore, we've finalized everything," she said. "Your new financial structure is clean. No shared access, no links, nothing traceable." "Perfect," I said. "There's one more thing. You mentioned you wanted to make some changes to your will." I smiled to myself. "Yes, Clara. It's time." She paused. "Do you want to remove your daughter entirely?" "No," I said slowly. "Just rearrange her lesson." When Clara came by with the documents, I sat at my kitchen table, pen in hand. I crossed out Rebecca's name next to my main accounts. Instead, I wrote, "To Rebecca and Kyle, I leave the value of what they took from me, nothing more, nothing less." Then, beneath that, I added a separate line. "To the Women's Financial Independence Trust, I leave the rest." So no one's kindness is ever mistaken for permission again. Clara read it twice, then looked up at me with a faint smile. "Cold," she said, "but poetic." "Justice doesn't always need warmth," I replied. "Just precision." That weekend, I decided to do something for myself, something Thomas had always encouraged but I'd never had the courage to try. I enrolled in a local ceramics class. When I walked into the studio, everyone looked younger, busier, full of energy. But clay doesn't care about age. It only responds to patience. There was something liberating about the mess. The gray mud under my nails, the slow shape forming between my fingers. It reminded me that creation is the opposite of control. And I'd spent too many years being controlled. One evening as I was packing up, the instructor, a kind man in his 60s named Henry, stopped me. "You've got a steady hand," he said. "Ever worked with clay before?" I smiled. "Not since I made mud pies in 1958. He laughed. "Then you've still got the touch." We started talking after class, small talk at first, then longer chats. He was a widower, quiet, thoughtful. He'd lost his wife 3 years before, and in his words, the silence was too heavy to sit in. I understood that. Every week we'd share coffee after class. No expectations. No pretense. Just company that didn't cost anything but time. Then one afternoon my phone rang. It was Rebecca. Her voice was sharp, frantic. "Mom, did you change your will?" I took a slow breath. "Hello to you too, Rebecca. Don't play games, Mom. I got a call from the bank. They said I'm not listed on your estate anymore." "That's correct," I said. "You're not. Why would you do that? We're family." "Family doesn't invoice each other for love," I said quietly. There was a pause, heavy shaking. "You're punishing me," she whispered. "No, Rebecca. I'm teaching you. There's a difference." She exhaled hard. "You're not the same anymore." "Good," I said, smiling faintly. "Then it's working." And I hung up. That night, I went to Henry's studio again. We worked side by side in silence until he said softly, "You look lighter today." "I just put down something I should have dropped a long time ago," I replied. He nodded, molding a lump of clay into a perfect vase. "Funny thing about clay," he said. "You can shape it however you want. But if you let someone else handle it too much, it loses its form." I looked at him, realizing how true that was. Maybe that's what Thomas would have wanted, for me to stop letting others reshape me. When I went home, I looked around my house, the pictures, the furniture, the plants I'd kept alive. Everything was quiet, but for once it wasn't lonely. It was mine. They say independence is expensive. They're wrong. It's priceless, and the only thing worth every single lesson it costs. Spring rolled in quietly, the kind of season that doesn't ask permission, it just takes over. The cherry blossoms on the street outside my window were in full bloom, pink and soft, as if the world had decided to start over. And in a strange way, so had I. My days had rhythm now. Morning coffee, ceramics class, walks through the park, the occasional dinner with Henry. No more calls from Rebecca. No requests. No, Mom, can you help us with this month's mortgage? Silence, glorious, heavy silence. But peace rarely lasts when other people depend on your chaos. Started with an email. Subject: urgent, please call me. It was from Rebecca. I almost deleted it. But curiosity got the better of me. Her message was short, frantic, and full of the same tone she used as a child when she'd broken something and wanted me to fix it. Mom, we need to talk. Please. It's serious. I made some bad financial decisions. Kyle's firm is under investigation. Please don't shut me out. I read it twice, folded the corner of my mouth into a small smile, and closed my laptop. Some lessons I thought only land when the noise is gone. 2 days later, I was in my garden trimming the roses when her car pulled up. It wasn't the shiny Mercedes she used to drive. This one was older, tired, its paint scratched like it had lived a harder life than its owners. Rebecca stepped out. No makeup, dark circles, the kind of exhaustion that money can't hide. Mom, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Rebecca, I replied, wiping my hands on my gardening gloves. You look different. She forced a weak laugh. Yeah, life's different now. I didn't invite her in right away. I wanted her to stand there, on the same porch she'd once looked down on me from. After a moment, she said, Can I come inside? I nodded toward the door. If you think you'll remember what respect sounds like. She didn't argue. Inside, she sat at the kitchen table, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to find the right words. Mom, I messed up, she said finally. Kyle's firm was investigated for fraudulent investments. We lost everything. The condo, the cars, the accounts, all gone. I stirred my tea slowly. I see. I didn't know, Mom. I thought we were building something. I thought. Her voice cracked. I thought money made me safe. I looked at her, really looked. For the first time in years, she didn't look proud or superior. She just looked like my daughter again. Safety doesn't come from money, Rebecca, I said softly. It comes from honesty. And you traded that a long time ago. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm sorry, Mom. For everything. For using you. For being cruel. I didn't rush to comfort her. I'd done enough of that for one lifetime. Instead, I said quietly, apology accepted. But forgiveness isn't the same as access. She blinked. What does that mean? It means you can sit at my table, I said. But not at my bank. The days that followed were awkward, small talks over coffee, a few shared meals. She'd offer to help in the garden or around the house, maybe hoping proximity would rebuild trust. But trust, I'd learned, doesn't regrow where someone salted the earth. One afternoon, she found a stack of letters on my counter. Donation receipts from the Women's Financial Independence Trust. She picked one up, eyes wide. You're funding this? Yes, I said. It helps women get out of financial abuse. Her voice wavered. Like me. I shook my head gently. No, Rebecca. Like me. Henry came by that evening, bringing a pie he claimed was homemade. I knew it wasn't, but I let him have his pride. We sat on the porch watching the sun dip low. He nodded toward the window where Rebecca's silhouette moved in the kitchen. She's trying, he said quietly. She's realizing. I corrected him. There's a difference. He smiled. You're tougher than you look. I had to be, I said. No one listens to polite women. Later that night, I found Rebecca in the kitchen washing dishes. She looked up when I entered, hands still wet, eyes tired. Mom, she said. I don't expect you to trust me. I don't know where to start. I leaned against the counter. Start by being the person you were before the greed. She nodded slowly. I think I lost her. I handed her a towel. Then find her. And this time keep her. Weeks passed. She began volunteering at the trust. At first I thought she was doing it out of guilt, but then I saw her smile one day genuinely while teaching a younger woman how to manage a budget. And for the first time, I believed she might actually be learning. I didn't say it out loud, but I knew something had changed. Not in her. In me. Because this was the first time I'd ever helped my daughter, without losing myself in the process. Sometimes love means saying no, and sometimes it means meaning it. By the time summer stretched its golden fingers over the garden, the house no longer felt like a battlefield. It felt alive. The air smelled of mint and earth, and the steady hum of cicadas filled the evenings. Peace, I'd learned, isn't the absence of conflict. It's the decision to stop reopening wounds that already scarred. Rebecca still came by, but now she knocked. She asked before using things. She spoke softly, like someone trying to earn their way back into a life they'd once taken for granted. And I didn't make it easy. That was part of the lesson. Henry had become a regular presence too. He'd show up with wildflowers or a thermos of coffee, pretending it was for me but drinking most of it himself. We'd sit on the porch in the late afternoons, listening to the wind move through the trees. One evening he looked at me and said, "You know, you don't talk about Thomas much." I smiled faintly. That's because I talked to him every day for 43 years. I'm giving him a break. He chuckled, then turned serious. You ever think about what comes next? Not the past, the next chapter. I hesitated. I'm not sure I have chapters left. He shook his head. You've got volumes left, Eleanor. You just stopped writing for a while. That line stayed with me. All night. A week later, I joined him on a trip to the local art fair. We set up a small booth for our ceramics class. Mostly bowls and mugs, nothing fancy. But when I saw someone pick up one of my pieces and say, "This feels peaceful," I felt something shift inside me. Maybe creation wasn't just therapy. Maybe it was proof of life. That night, Henry dropped me off at home, and as he turned to leave, he said, "See? You don't just rebuild your life, Eleanor. You decorate it." I stood in the doorway long after he drove away, smiling to myself. Rebecca called the next morning. "Mom, can we have dinner? I have something to tell you." I agreed cautiously. When she arrived, she was dressed simply. No jewelry, no designer handbag, just jeans and a cotton blouse. She helped set the table, even brought dessert she'd baked herself. The smell of vanilla and cinnamon filled the kitchen. Halfway through the meal, she looked up, her voice careful. "Mom, I've been volunteering at the trust full-time. Naomi, the director, offered me a position." I raised my brows. "A real job?" She laughed a little. "Yeah, real job. Modest pay. Honest work." For the first time there was no edge in her tone, just gratitude. "I've been learning from the women there," she continued. "About responsibility. About boundaries. About you." I stayed quiet, letting her speak. She took a deep breath. "You were right, Mom. Love doesn't mean giving everything. It means giving the right things." I nodded. "And keeping the rest for yourself." She smiled softly. "I'm trying to do that now." After dinner, as she helped with the dishes, she paused. "I met a woman at the trust," she said. "Her daughter took everything, her savings, her car, even her house. She said your story gave her courage to fight back." I blinked. "My story?" Rebecca nodded. "Naomi shared it with her permission, I guess. The part about how you took control." I laughed quietly. "I suppose I've become some kind of cautionary tale." Rebecca looked at me, her eyes glistening. "No, Mom. You became hope." Later that night, when she left, I stood by the window watching her car disappear down the street. For years I'd looked out that same window with resentment, waiting for apologies, explanations, love. Now, for the first time, I didn't need any of it. Because sometimes closure doesn't come from others. It comes from realizing you've already moved past the need. That weekend, Henry and I took a drive to the coast. The ocean was endless, blue-gray waves folding into each other, the smell of salt sharp in the air. We walked along the sand quietly until he said, "You know, I think you're one of the bravest women I've ever met." I laughed. "Brave? I didn't fight dragons, Henry." "No," he said, smiling. "You just stopped feeding them." I turned to look at him, wind tangling my hair. And for a moment I saw the reflection of my life in those waves. Restless, loud, beautiful, and finally free. They say strength is loud. But they're wrong. Strength is quiet. It's the sound of a woman pouring her tea, choosing peace over permission, and finally saying enough. A year slipped by in that easy golden way time does when you finally stop waiting for someone else to make you happy. The garden flourished, the house stayed quiet, and for the first time in decades, I woke up every morning with a sense of calm that didn't depend on anyone's approval. I turned 70 that spring. No grand party. No glittering dinner tables or champagne flutes clinking in rehearsed affection. Just me, Henry, and Rebecca, sitting in the backyard under the pergola, sharing lemon cake and stories. Rebecca gave me a framed photo of us. A real one, not posed, taken during one of our afternoons in the garden. We were both laughing, hair messy, hands dirty from pulling weeds. No masks. Just truth. I wanted you to remember, she said. The first day we really started talking again. I smiled. I don't need a picture for that, Rebecca. But thank you. Henry raised his glass of iced tea. To Eleanor, the only woman I know who can rebuild an empire and a soul in the same year. I rolled my eyes but smiled all the same. After dinner, Rebecca lingered as Henry went inside to wash the dishes. She looked out at the horizon, her expression soft. Mom, she said, there's something I've been meaning to tell you. I turned toward her. I paid off the last of the debts Kyle left behind. I felt a slow wave of pride. Good for you. She hesitated. I also signed the divorce papers last week. The air went still. Rebecca had been avoiding that decision for over a year. I didn't want to tell you until it was real, she said. But it's done. I think I finally understand what you meant about not mistaking love for ownership. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I'm proud of you. For a moment, I saw not the spoiled woman who drained my accounts, but the little girl who used to pick wildflowers and leave them on my pillow. Over the next few months, Rebecca grew stronger. She rented a small apartment, modest and cozy, and she kept her job at the trust. We met once a week, coffee, walks, small talk that didn't bleed into manipulation. She never asked for money again, and I never offered. It was the most honest piece we'd ever shared. Then one morning in late autumn, I received a letter. Not an email. A real envelope, thick paper, my name written in careful cursive. It was from the trust. They were honoring me at their annual gala for transformational contribution to women's independence. I almost laughed. For most of my life, I'd been the woman who funded other people's dreams while losing my own. Now I was being recognized for teaching others not to do what I had done. Life has a wicked sense of humor that way. The gala was held downtown, chandeliers, white linens, that polite hum of people who think good deeds come with dress codes. Rebecca insisted on driving me. When we arrived, Naomi, the trust's director, greeted me with a warm hug. Eleanor, she said, you've inspired more women than you know. Tonight isn't just about your donation. It's about your story. I blinked. My story. She smiled. Rebecca shared it with our volunteers. They want you to tell it yourself. My stomach tightened. I don't do speeches. Rebecca touched my arm. Just speak like you do at home. The truth will take care of the rest. Later that night, I stood at the podium under soft golden light. Dozens of faces looked up at me. Some curious, some admiring, some quietly broken in that way only people who've lost control of their lives understand. I took a deep breath. My name is Eleanor Whitmore, I began. And for most of my life, I believed love meant giving everything I had. I let the words hang in the air, heavy, true. I gave time. I gave money. I gave silence. Because I thought generosity would keep me safe. But all it did was teach people that I didn't need boundaries. The room was completely still. I learned the hard way. I continued. That love without respect is just dependence wearing a kind face. And the moment I said no, the moment I stopped funding my own mistreatment, was the moment I started living. Someone in the crowd sniffled softly. So if you're sitting here tonight, I said, thinking it's too late to reclaim your life, I'm living proof it isn't. You can always start over. Even at 70. The audience rose to their feet, applause echoing through the hall like a heartbeat. Rebecca stood near the front, tears streaming down her face. But this time they were the kind that cleanse, not manipulate. Afterward, she hugged me tightly. Mom, she whispered, you saved more than yourself tonight. I smiled against her shoulder. Then maybe that's what all this was for. A few weeks later, winter crept in. Henry and I spent Christmas Eve together by the fire. He'd brought his famous store-bought pie again. We laughed, we reminisced, and when the clock struck midnight, he took my hand. "You ever think," he said softly, "that maybe all of this, the pain, the loss, it wasn't punishment?" I looked at him curious. "Then what was it?" He smiled faintly. "Preparation." I nodded slowly, understanding. 'Cause maybe he was right. Maybe life had to break me before it could rebuild me. I once thought money could buy love, comfort, safety. Now I know better. The most valuable thing I ever owned was my peace. And this time no one could charge it to my card. 3 years passed. 3 calm, deliberate years that felt like the reward for a lifetime of storms. The garden had grown wild and proud, a reflection, I supposed, of the woman who tended it. Henry and I married quietly one spring morning. Just us, the officiant, and a few friends who'd learned the value of gentle company. No extravagance. No debt. No audience to impress. Just peace, the kind that comes when you've finally stopped apologizing for existing. Rebecca sat beside me during the ceremony. When it was over, she hugged me with both arms, whispering, "You deserve this, Mom." I believed her. She looked stronger too, her own face softer, her voice surer. She'd been promoted at the trust, now managing outreach programs that helped older women regain financial control. Sometimes I'd watch her on stage giving speeches talking about independence and resilience and think, that's my daughter. Not because she was perfect, but because she'd learned what I'd nearly forgotten. Love without power isn't love at all. Henry and I built a new life, slow and full of quiet joys. We traveled, nothing extravagant, just places that made us feel small in the best way. Mountains, forests, lakes that mirrored the sky. We collected moments, not things. And every time we came home, I'd look around my house, our house, and remember when I used to feel like a guest here. Now I was the host of my own life again. Then one morning, as I sat on the porch drinking coffee, the mail arrived. A thick envelope from a law firm. At first my stomach sank, old reflexes die hard. But when I opened it, I found a note from Rebecca. "Mom, I'm updating my will. I've decided to create something like you did. A trust for women who've lost everything. I called it the Eleanor Foundation. I hope that's okay. You always said love should build, not drain. I want to build now. Because you taught me how. With all my love. Rebecca." I pressed the letter against my chest. For a moment the world went quiet. Not empty, just still, like it was listening. Thomas would have been proud. Maybe even a little amused. Later that evening, Henry and I walked down to the shore. The sunset painted the water in molten gold. Waves lapping softly at our feet. "You're quiet," he said. "I was just thinking," I murmured. "All those years I thought I was losing everything. Maybe I was just making room." "For what?" he asked. "For the life I was supposed to have." He squeezed my hand. "Then don't waste it." I smiled. "Not a chance." As darkness fell, I looked out at the horizon, that endless stretch of possibility. I thought about all the women like me, mothers, wives, widows, who'd spent their lives believing their worth was tied to what they gave. And I wished I could tell every one of them what I'd finally learned. That freedom isn't rebellion. It's reclamation. It's standing up one quiet morning, pouring your coffee, and realizing no one can take your peace unless you hand it to them. Candle. My name is Eleanor Whitmore. And for 73 years, I was the woman who paid the bills of everyone's happiness but my own. But not anymore. Now I live in a house filled with laughter that isn't forced. A garden that grows on its own time. And a love that doesn't demand proof of its worth. Because peace, true peace, doesn't need permission. It just needs a woman brave enough to stop apologizing for earning it.